This podcast is brought to you by Guiding Growing Minds, a social enterprise that aims to give all children the best opportunity to reach their potential and succeed in living rich and meaningful lives.
Dr. Billy Garvey, episode 109, locked and loaded.
Yes.
It's our reflection episode on conflict resolution. What are people going to learn this week?
Yeah, so I feel like you enjoyed that one.
I did.
Like
I enjoyed the discussion of it. Yes, that's my reflection. I really enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, so we go some beautiful like reflections and advice as always, but we also go into some depth around certain elements of conflict resolution with ourselves, with kids who are struggling, and touch on different elements of that. I hope it's really helpful.
Heaps of elements. Yeah. I really liked the part around like how your tween daughter can help resolve their own conflict resolution. I'm a fair ways off, but I can see how it feels really bad for them and tough to navigate and can have a big impact on them socially and emotionally. So, I really enjoyed that part. There was heaps of others, but I just
developmenally
really
appropriate levels of doing it, how teachers can do it.
Yes.
There was non-verbal stuff like
non-verbal
specific elements of the steps.
You really cover the full paediatric spectrum of ages, don't you?
Well, hopefully.
Very good. Guys, we really hope you enjoy the episode. Dig in.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician.
And I'm Nick, a developing parent.
We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids.
This is pop culture parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is it, Daddy? And what does it do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you?
Good, Dr. Nick. How are you?
Good. I got Dr. Nick this week.
Really?
My kid was there and she's like, he's not a doctor.
Yeah, that's great.
I was like, cop that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it was nice.
Well, mate, I think I see you as this. It's really funny. We had some, we're doing conflict resolution reflection. And like all of them, I came out of it thinking, God, I don't know if that was helpful for anyone. Some lovely feedback. And I didn't tell you this. We got feedback from the person you met in the pub who was like...
Oh, cool. Are you still listening?
Yeah. And then other people said I'm the same as the person Nick met in the pub.
Yeah,
I don't have kids. I work with kids. I just listen for myself. And it was really interesting that 109 episodes in, I realised I talk a lot about like how you help with Evie, but I maybe don't talk enough about how you and the podcast helps me in my individual personal growth, including with conflict resolution, because there's one argument that a true like deep friendship has gone through conflict and resolved it. And I feel like you and I have gone through that, but also just that I don't know if I've ever specifically said that you make me a better person and a better dad and a better partner and all that stuff. And I was just like, oh man, it's maybe a bit late in the day to finally acknowledge that. But it's just, and I think that hopefully I'm helping as well. But I think that's what the podcast is doing for a lot of people, is it's helping them with their own personal growth, which is really interesting because its focus is obviously parenting.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't, so just to thank you for that. Appreciate it. I wouldn't be as good a parent if I wasn't doing this podcast with you. So the stuff that you teach me every fortnight, and then the stuff I reflect upon and I have to do the work, you teach me the theory. Fortunately, I get a lot of opportunities to apply the theory, particularly this last one on conflict resolution. It's been constant. So
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful thing, because I'm obviously trained in it. I spend all day seeing kids that are like at the tip of the spear with this stuff, that are really, really struggling, have gone through a lot of hardship and having a lot of challenges. And then I get to come home and, think about how to apply that to my own kids. And it's just so amazing. Like I can't imagine anyone who's in a similar situation that gets to like spend a lot of time training in something, a lot of time practicing at a high level, and then get to apply that theory and experience to the thing they care most about in the world.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Kind of like I'm trying to think of a similar analogy, like if Tiger Woods is, university lecturing about golf and then training people in golf, and then the thing he cares about the most in the world is golf. So he gets to go home and do it.
Yeah, I think the see one, do one, teach one?
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah.
That helps you
doing
improve.
teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that it? I've probably stuffed the
Totally.
order.
No. You're right. You're right. Totally. It's so it's really interesting, and it's really nice that so many people gave us positive feedback on.
Yep.
There's a little bit which you might use in the episode actually. There's a little bit of negative feedback, but that's okay. And we'll talk about how we handle that we're using the model.
We use the model. Play it back.
And I just have to do a couple of quick shout outs. One is that I think we've got a bunch of new people come in to listen. I can't see anyone in clinic. So people are sending in like, can you please see our kid? That's really nice to hear that. But our wait list is horrible and we just have a catchment. We are trying to build the capacity, including Guiding Growing Minds is looking at with the big hospital I work at, training people together, which is really cool.
Just to articulate that, because I sort of didn't understand it when you used to say, oh, no, we can't see anyone. So you're part of the public health system and there is patients that are given to you. You can't book to see you. It's not even a wait list. It's not even a wait list thing. It's not that Billy's like, can't see, the wait list is too long. It's no, you don't decide. It's
So I sit within a team of consultants and we train a handful of fellows every year.
Yeah.
I'd probably argue that all of those, including the fellows, are better to see than me. I just supervise a lot of the fellows. But yeah, you're more likely to see them, but also you have to be in the criteria of the specific tertiary clinics that we do. Other people will reach out and say, can you suggest someone in my area? The people I know are in a similar situation. They've just got very long wait lists. But the amazing, most important medical specialists there is, the GPs, are the best people to tap on the shoulder and say, hey, who's a good developmental paediatrician that's in the area? Completely understand that how long those wait lists are. Sometimes there isn't a list because there's no one, and Guiding Growing Minds is really trying to address that as well. So trying to increase capacity of the professionals that are around kids, like which is what my PhD was, but also trying to think about how do we, bridge the gap between this knowledge, because a lot of people out there are doing stuff with, I think, really good intentions, but they just don't have the training in child development and mental health. So we're really trying to bridge that gap between the evidence and the science and where people are living their lives. So it's been really great to be coming out and doing a lot of community stuff. We're getting so many requests, which is just phenomenal, but we're trying to pick the best partnerships that we can build to achieve that goal, which is really cool. And we also, I just looked before the show, actually, you and I were talking about how cool it would be to get on Joe Rogan. And I just looked and you actually can't put in a guest request anymore. So you used to be able to. Now, people might be like, I don't know if that podcast is similar to yours. I want to go on there because I think I can use that amazing audience to shift some perspectives, beliefs and behaviours around how we support kids, such as just being responsive and sensitive and all that stuff and talking about the evidence. But yeah, it looks like we can't suggest. I actually did when I went to America. I suggested myself. I didn't hold my breath waiting for the email to come back, but I was like, no, this great guy.
He's a great guy.
He's really good.
Billy, is this
really
you?
Charismatic. Yeah. I was like, God, my email's got my name in it. They'll know
Well, that'll
it's me.
be exciting. Hopefully we'll get on there.
Yeah, it'd just be amazing because I feel like you'd be this beautiful conduit of all of the MMA you do.
I don't do MMA. I don't do MMA. I'm not tough enough. Billy, that's fantastic feedback from people. And the feedback did not stop there this week.
Really?
That feedback went into the polls that we read.
Oh, yes. Thank you. There's actual format to this.
There's a format.
109 in.
There is. 109 eps, I know. Wow. Feels a lot. No. Hey.
It's flying for me.
All right. Should we go into the polls?
Yeah, let's do it.
I love keeping us on track.
Yeah.
I feel like a star for you. But this is my job.
Yeah, I've tried to tighten the questions, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Interesting.
Actually had some help. Amazing, which is massive shout out to everyone on Patreon, sponsors, all that stuff. People are coming in to help, which is good. I'm still absolutely drowning, but it's amazing. So we're having some help around there. Around the edges to make it a little bit easier, which is amazing. So thank you to everyone that's helping us be sustainable.
Excellent.
Sorry, go.
Billy, polls. First question was, did you grow up in a house with a lot of conflict at home? 60% of people said yes. So over half.
Yeah, so I'm in that group. I think I said it last time.
I'm not. I don't think I am.
Yeah. Would you say that you have conflict in your house now? Like a lot of conflict, which was the question?
Nah.
Yeah.
Not in my mind what conflict is. I mean, it's not. There's a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all just trying to arrive at understanding.
Totally. And we'll talk about like healthy conflict and unhealthy conflict. But I grew up with a lot of unhealthy conflict, which is like just devastated permanently family relationships.
Well, that's what I
which is a lot
don't
of
think
people.
I have.
Totally.
And I had to hope I'm not like at the seed start of that with anything. So there's conflict. Like there's not friction even, but we don't always agree. Like on stupid things. My stuff's menial, I think.
Yeah.
That I don't want to get worse.
Totally. And we'll get into the bit of how it's healthy to not always agree and how you process that.
Good. Okay. Second question. Are you worried about your kid and how they manage conflict? 83% say yes. I would say yes to that.
Yeah, I would say yes to that. I had a really interesting, I always bang on about this, but the water slide, the one close to us. And just like, often little boys, but not always. Just like there's 8 kids lining up every time, and because some of the little kids take a while to work up the courage and all that stuff. And I just always go up with Evie because I'm like, and just don't want to, navigate. I don't think she's got that skill set yet. And these boys just flew past the front of the line, went to jump in. I was like, just crouched down. I was like, hey boys, which I always do. Like, hey boys, it's so exciting, isn't it? But there's a line and all that stuff, and being really calm and just trying to connect with them. But I turned back around and Evie was just beaming. She was just like beaming with pride. And it was really interesting because I had to think about how I navigate that because I didn't want her to see it as like a power thing. I wanted her to see it as a connection thing. And it's a really interesting thing that I think, yeah, that's the whole point of like nonviolent communication and real conflict resolution is connection is the key. And it's often people who do mediation don't prioritize that. They will often be like, what do you want? Go after the other person. What do you want? Here's a compromise. There's no connection. Like, and I've gone through, don't know if you have mediation processes that were just awfully handled, and it can be, it's really important that you understand that that's the skill set that's needed, not, just objectivity. Like that's the problem is that we'll talk about that more. It's not just about being objective. Because if I just said to that kid, there's 10 people in front of you, get to the back, it's not actually helping him, is it? It's not helping him learn. It's just an authoritarian power move.
And from memory, the boys were pretty good about it.
Yeah, definitely. But also, do you know what happened after this? Which is this proves your point about put the work in. I was at another water park. We went to the one real north. I think I was telling you.
No, I haven't been.
Yeah, I won't have gone with you. I don't think we have. Yeah, but it's like 30 minutes north.
Oh no, yeah, that one. Yeah,
yeah.
I thought you were saying it was called Real North.
Yeah, sorry,
no, I've been to that one. Yeah.
So
no,
really,
we were there one day. It was public holiday.
Yeah, pumping. But it was really funny. There was this. I went in and there was a kid who was bopping around his own, but he was kind of old enough. Like he was. I think what was he? Maybe he was 9. And he was cruising around his own water slide, and he comes up to us, and we're like walking up the wet stairs to the water slide. And he's like, "Oh, be careful, they're slippy." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, mate. That's really kind of you to think of us and all this stuff." And we just started playing with him. And his dad, for half an hour, was out on the phone, just watching him he was outside and the kid was inside. And it's really funny because you could easily judge him and be like, "Mate, come in here with your kid." But his kid was so pro-social that they were going down the water slide together, and he always let Evie go first. And Evie's like half his size and his age.
Pint size.
And so he's like always letting her go first and stuff. And then, as happened, which is fine, they were playing a game where they were running away from monsters or something, and Evie went down, and then he went down and accidentally kicked her in the back, and Evie got really upset and stuff. But it was really funny because then he tried to repair it. He had water pistols, and he had a water pistol and he was shooting everyone, and his dad gets off the phone, comes in, pulls a second water pistol out of the bag, gives it to the kid and goes, "Go give that to the little girl and learn her name," did all this stuff, played together. And I was like, this is you. He's done all of the work. You know what I mean? That kid is not born with all those skills. Yeah. The dad has done the work to make that kid so pro-social. And that kid will thrive because of that. Do you know what I mean? He's the most pro-social kid that I've met in the last month. And you could easily walk in and be like, his dad's out on the phone, not even helping him. But his dad's actually clearly done the work. Yeah, and now also, he can back off, which is what we always talk about.
Well, maybe that's what he was also doing. Maybe he'd build him up and he was backing off.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? It's this kind of pay it forward, which a movie will never do. But it's this kind of idea of like, put the work in now.
I don't mind the idea.
Yeah, but put the work in now, at the playground, at the birthday parties and all that stuff, and then you can back off. Whereas I think a lot of people now are like just backing off and like they'll figure it out. The problem is they won't. And a lot of people are like, well, we did when we were kids. And I'm like, yeah, well, 46% of adults will have a mental illness. So I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that we can really take the trophy of how well we were all brought up. Anyway, I promise I won't do this.
No, you're right. No, it's good. It's a really good point. No, we'll have to talk through the polls.
Yeah,
more.
I just wanted to
Totally
celebrate
fine.
that dad because I'm often like, especially a boy who is so pro-social on the water slide, which I often get on my soapbox about.
Water slides is like, that's Lord of the Flies stuff.
Yeah, the conch.
The conch. Hey, Billy, do you feel like conflict is an unavoidable part of your life? 92% of people said yes.
Yeah, I tried to use that photo in a way. It wasn't that funny because I was doing it on the fly. But that's the photo I used for that poll is where they're like holding hands. So I was like, the conflict's finally ended. I guess they've gone on to the next life. But I couldn't
find anything.
But yeah, because the word count is so limited that I couldn't make it work. But yeah, I think like the movie, that is not a normal part of life. We shouldn't expect that we just have horrible conflict in our relationships, especially those that manage.
But that's a distinction. So I think, are you saying you think conflict should be avoidable?
Yeah, I think unhealthy conflict should be.
I agree that should be avoidable, but I think conflict is friction, and that's normal.
Definitely. But a good example is, and Annalise is phenomenal, she's the reason this works. We have disagreements, but we work through them, but we don't like shout at each other. We don't like, whereas I grew up seeing that, I thought that was normal in a relationship.
Gotcha.
My relationships, I thought it was passion. And then I've
like
kind of,
those, to like the
exactly.
in the film.
Do you know what I mean? And like that passion, that idea of, I think we put up with so much because we think it's just a normal part of life. And one of the big misinterpretations of passion is that it has conflict and, some things that can be hurtful and all those things. Whereas it's not true. I have a really healthy relationship with you. I get to see you heaps. Like, you enrich my life. I don't need conflict. It doesn't, we can have disagreements, but we don't, we treat each other well all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everyone should expect from the relationships that they're in. And I think a lot of people don't because they've had poor conflict resolution role modeled to them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just reflecting. Yep. Sorry. Speaking of reflections.
Yes. Did I put you on me first?
Me first. So we've got feedback. I'm not rushing you. I feel like I'm rushing you.
No, you're not at all.
Let's do it, Billy. So we've got 2 feedbacks. Hi, Nick and Dr. Billy. I've been working my way through your podcast after Billy visited my child's primary school where he presented a Building Resilient Kids session. I was instantly hooked and have purchased the book and am now doing my best to parent in a way that I'm going to set my boy up for success in all aspects of their lives, and I have this podcast to thank you for the help. I listened to the conflict resolution episode on my way home from work. I didn't get through to the end before walking through the door, but I did get through the framework section. My boys had a long day at school and my husband was walking in the door with them after swimming lessons a few minutes after I'd arrived home. I could already hear him telling my 7-year-old son what was going to happen when he walked inside, and I could also hear my 7-year-old arguing back with him, negotiating and saying he didn't want to shower straight away. God, it's Henry again. I got daughters. Sorry. I instantly thought this is my chance to use the framework that I had just learned to see how I can make positive changes. I spoke to my son. I observed, explained how I felt when he said no to showering and wanting to stay cold and wet in his swimming clothes and my need in this situation. I went on to give him a specific request and I managed to get him to focus on me while I explained all this, and we even made it fun by adding a fun little extra challenge to his shower. He happily hopped in and we got it done. When he got out, I did steps 1 to 3 where we celebrated the win. In the past, probably still will if I'm being honest, would have just yelled and told him just to get in the shower and demanded he do this, but trying this out with a small thing like a shower has given me the confidence to find the patience to do it more often. My husband is an authoritarian parent and we really struggle with conflict in our parenting styles, but I'm hopeful that I can also get him to see how this can be successful and make our house a more pleasant home to be in. Thank you for everything you do and continue to help parents in a fun and informative way. Oh.
Bang, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of the follow-up bit, coming back to it.
Yeah.
Where I'm like,
you did this, made me feel like that.
Yeah. Hey.
Meets my need.
Yeah, doing it after the, because they'll, get them into line, doing air quotes, if anyone listening, get them into line, get them on the same page doing the thing in a nice way that they actually want to do it like this parent. That follow-up bit, it's so easy where you're like, hey, you came in and we were sort of this and this, and then you turn around and did this and this, made me feel great because it's awesome because now I want to do this with you on whatever.
We should, if it's helpful, we could do a future topic on rewards and punishments, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't have a lot of evidence out there about that and a lot of misinformation. But why does it matter that you're doing that with the girls?
The following up? Yeah. It's just reinforcing something positive, so they attach that to maybe what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Beautiful. So what you're doing is you're helping them intrinsically feel good about themselves by giving them feedback.
Not extrinsic.
And you're also helping them understand why. Do you know what I mean? So like with Evie, for example, when she, I think I spoke about it last time, when I make a request of her that involves another person, I at the time will give her an understanding or try to give her an understanding of why, because it'll make that person feel good about themselves. And then if she does it, I will say, you should feel really good about that because you've helped that person feel like she really had a good day with you, that you really appreciate her, whatever it is. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to help her explore that. I'm not telling her how she should feel. I'm trying to explore with her why I think it's important.
Gotcha.
The other thing is from the strategy bit, just because I might not say it again, we got a little bit of feedback which has happened before, but I don't think I've ever spoken to you on the mics about it, where people are like, you're being unfair to Nick, like putting pressure on him to explain stuff.
Oh.
Totally. But before you say respond to it, we also get a lot of feedback just for people that are worried about that they're like, that's one of the best bits about the pod because it makes me feel okay when I'm struggling to pick it up as well, which is often because I'm not explaining it well. But it's just an important bit that a couple of people were like, you just seem to be hammering Nick lately and it seems a bit unfair. And so, but the PCB community really cares about you, which is awesome.
Oh, and thank you. And thank you for those words. If I'm honest, I sit there with Henry and I'm like, because we listen to it on the Sunday night to do the highlights and I'm like, a couple of tough listens coming up. She goes, what? I go, can I get my head around this theory? And we laugh about it. And then we unpack it and she goes, no, that was okay. And I go, we go back to it 3 times and then we'll go through it again. And we kind of laugh and go, but I have to listen to it again. In the moment when we talk, I don't take it all on. I don't take much on. I try and stay here and just talk to you. Sometimes I get lost and you see that look where I'm like away, trying to put that in my brain. But it's only when I re-listen that I actually pick it up and learn it. I just found the theory last week, the 1, 2, 3, and then 3, 2, or 1, 1, 2, 3 again was just tough. But
yeah, which is how exceptional you are that you roll in with no idea what we're going to talk about and then learn it in one take.
Yep, it's not pretend, people.
No. Well, that's the thing, mate. They couldn't make you. That mold is broken. So unreplicatable in a good way. Feedback 2. Hey gents, big fan of the pod and I love recommending it to other dads who then call me and tell me how much they love it. Recommended it last weekend and a mate messaged me on Monday first thing in the morning to say it's cool to hear dads talk like that. I had a crack at Marshall's Law with my daughter, almost 4 years old, this week after listening to the conflict app. Classic moment for us right now is a blow up after stopping a show. I waited until we were both regulated and upstairs in the bathroom before the bath. Here's how it went down. Observation. M. I know you got really upset when I turned off Paw Patrol. Feelings. It seems like you were feeling disappointed or even really angry because the show ends. Needs. I know you really love Paw Patrol and it's fun to watch the pups. Request. Would you be willing to practice saying okay, Dad, when it's time to turn it off so we can still have fun doing something else? I was feeling amazing, like it had really worked. And then her eyes slightly moved from my eyes over my shoulder and she said, Dad, why is Bee's toothbrush in the bunny toothbrush holder and not in the sloth toothbrush holder? I'm going to keep going with it like I've kept going with a lot of your other tricks. This is more of a reflection, but how can I handle these situations? Not just watching things, it can be other things like handling conflict using these methods when you have a toddler with a 3-second attention span. Shout out to my brother for putting me onto you guys. So we'll talk about developmentally appropriate levels to do this as well because it's really important. There's a really good question that comes about this.
Can we just do a quick solve on this one though? Because I reckon I've got this challenge. Well, I don't have the answer. You're going to do it because I'm going to mess the wording up. What I do with the Paw Patrol stuff, and same show, mate. Same issue when you switch it off. I try and do not a deal because we know my deals go bad, but like counting up the minutes. Like, and I know they don't have a concept of time, but we do the thing where you're like, so how much more do you want to watch? And they'll go 18 episodes. You go, well, how about we do 20 minutes and we'll count up as opposed to counting down. Kids hate countdown, you were telling me. Is that what you were telling me?
Yeah.
They like counting up and you go, do you reckon we can finish? Yeah, stopwatches. Do you reckon we can finish 3 episodes? You do the maths pretty quick. You know, there's 7 minutes or whatever. Do you reckon we can finish by 20 minutes? And then it goes past 20. They go, oh, looks like we're getting it extra now. Goes to 21. And go, oh, couldn't get it done by 20. Got it done by 21. Good job. And they go, cool. And they might switch it off. Anyway.
Amazing. Do you know the
so mentally
things?
taxing having to think that far ahead for that parent. I get it. But like that will might save that blow up because I still deal with it.
Well, one of the really beautiful developmental things you're doing is you're saying 2 things. You're saying we. You're not saying you. Do you reckon you could get off? You're saying we. Also, you're giving autonomy within the request. So that's really important. So for all age groups, the toddlers to the teens, you know, what do you think would be, you know, like who do you think should get in the car first? Like race to the car, making it fun. Like, and that's what that parent is probably doing really well as well, is just connecting on that level as well. But if you give autonomy, and that's what you're giving autonomy as well, and we do this as well with Evie in mealtimes, we're like, how many more bites do you think? Do you know what I mean? We're not saying you have to finish the meal or you have to keep eating. We just say, and she feels powerful then, and she's more likely to progress with the request that we've made of having some more because she has some say. And it's really, that's the difference between an authoritative and an authoritarian parent. Is the authoritarian is like, because I said so. The authoritative parent is like, you have a voice. I want to understand it. And we'll talk about that in the context of conflict resolution.
I'm a deep sighs because I still do that. I still will roll back when it's late and tired and things aren't going well. I'll be like, because I've said so. I'll still say that, to be really honest. Like I do that stuff and I'll be like, that's it. I haven't set it up to say we're turning it off at 28 minutes. And I'll be like, that's it. And there'll still be dust-ups. Like I told you the other night, I had the bad deal went sour and it went bad. It's in the last step highlights.
Yeah.
So, just saying like that parent, that's just one thing I try.
Yeah, beautiful.
Do it infrequently.
Yeah, totally. And if we think just quickly, because I might forget about it in the future, there's really, whenever we're in conflict resolution mode, you know, we've talked about a certain element of the framework, but there's an even simpler way to think about it. And the first is perspective taking. That's what we're trying to do, is help understand the other person's perspective and also voice ours objectively without judgment or accusations, anything like that. And then some self-compassion and then empathy. Do you know what I mean? So if I'm like, if we're struggling about something, I'm trying to understand what your perspective is and also voice mine. But I've also got to be compassionate with myself in that moment. I can't throw myself under the bus, which we'll talk about people that do that. And then I have to have empathy for you. And genuine empathy is, I don't have to agree with you. I have to really try and understand what your experience is and validate it. It might be different to mine. You might have a belief that is in complete conflict with all my values. But if I come out hot out the gate and be like, you're wrong or you're a bad person, do you know what I mean? That's a mistake that we all make. The bad person you're saying is like judging them as a person, right? That's the well, it's not the person, it's the behaviour. But also, like, how helpful is it going to be if I say, mate, you're so selfish, all you do is think about you, you never think about me. Are you likely to think about how I'm going?
Yeah, no, look, I can tell you from experience it doesn't work, Billy.
Receiving it, though, surely not.
I delved it out a couple of days ago. Let's not talk about it, though. But I take your point.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'll speed up.
No, you're right.
I'm just,
I'm not trying to wind you up. Just trying to get you going. Hey, Billy, there's 9 shorts.
And shorts, sorry.
Billy, there's 9 shorts and 7 longs.
How long have I done this? Okay.
That's gracious. Hey, Billy, how do you manage conflict when one kid is the instigator and the other one's always trying to repair? Figure out why the kid's instigating.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And is there something that's really consistent of why they continually instigate and bait that kid?
Yeah.
Because they can get a reaction?
Yeah.
I don't know, I was the youngest. It's pretty baitable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And you know one of my brothers.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Shout out to your amazing sister too.
Yes, amazing sister. Yes. Because Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, what do you do?
I don't know, try and figure out why they're starting it.
Yeah. When do you do that?
Probably not after it's happened.
Yeah. Well, you can like reflect on it, but not actively with the kid. Like, don't pull them aside.
So how do you?
So two things. Two things with that kid. Let's talk about one. Let's separate them, which is important. In the moment, thinking about what's happening, trying to catch them earlier, and trying to think about like what are they seeking, what need are they trying to get met. Sometimes, like with those little kids, it'll just be control. They don't have any ability of perspective taking. So how can you think about a healthier way for them to have that need met? And often you have to catch them earlier and provide more scaffolded support for them to play well. Like the dad on the water slide. You put the work in and then the siblings play well together.
Yep.
Also, outside of interactions with a sibling and work you just do with that kid one-on-one is how do you help with their impulsiveness if it is destructive to their relationships? How do you help them with like just simple, basic emotional regulation? And you can do that with an 18-month-old.
Oh.
Yeah, just purely through co-regulation.
Oh.
How do you help them? You know what I mean? Like just being with them, sitting there with them, low levels of frustration, feeling's okay, guide them towards stuff. Guide them towards caring behaviour. Like we've done this with Charlie. Charlie came in last night, just been chaos and knew how much I had to do on this. And Charlie's just in the bath and we come in because Annalise and I both they play so well in the bath together, those two. They're just phenomenal. And Annalise and I are scrambling, trying to get everything done in the like little time we have. And we just hear a bit of action in the bathroom, come in and Charlie's just tipping out water. Like he's got a little cup and the water at the bathroom's flooded. Now we come in, he just looks at us and he just lights up and cackles laughing. You know what I mean? Classic, which is fine. Developmentally, that's not a concern and it's not really a concern. But what we've got to understand is that like that's reinforcing that behaviour because it's wiring in his brain. And even if we got upset, that's still like giving it attention and stuff. Now, if I say no, don't do that, doesn't help because it doesn't give him any guidance. What I've got to think about is what's an appropriate thing for him to do. So very simply, if I wanted to, next time he's in the bath and he's playing with that toy, I just get him to throw water against the wall that's in the bath and celebrate that and laugh with him and have fun with him. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Instead of just getting angry at him every time he throws water out of the bath.
Yep.
Anyway, I'll pick the pace up.
No, it's good. You gave me a moment to adjust the font size. I think my eyes are literally going. I can't read on the old font I used to have here.
Yeah, well, that's a classic, just squinting. It's like I refuse to get glasses. I'll just squint every time I read.
I turned 44 last week, Billy.
Yeah, I think you're keeping your powder dry on that evening, aren't you?
No, I don't.
For a potential grizzy.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you about that, Griswold.
Next step.
Light up. Yeah, next step. Hey, Billy, my partner feels we shouldn't argue around my daughter at all. I think we should model good conflict resolution skills. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a really personal choice. Like I think the difference between arguing and disagreeing, I think disagreeing is a good thing because then you can role model the steps that we've talked about, like thinking about feelings, thinking about needs, communicating that effectively and, trying to connect like we've talked about, perspective taking, self-compassion, empathy, and working on that. I think kids need to see it a little bit to have it understood. If you're just like, that's not our style, we don't do that, that's fine, but then you need to think about how you role model it in other ways through narratives, playtime, conversation, all that kind of stuff. The thing that I worry about is we know that an adverse childhood experience is household dysfunction, and household dysfunction, a component of that is just constant conflict. So I think that instead of like we shouldn't do it in front of the kids, if it's dysfunctional, think about we need to sort this out for us and our kids will benefit as well from it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So don't just pull it into the bedroom or be like, we'll have this fight later. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it goes back to what I was talking about. That's not, don't expect that. Like the amount of, I can't even remember if I include any of them. The amount of people that like sent in like the awful situations I live in at home with a partner who's abusive and they're just like, this is what it's like. And I'm just like, it shouldn't be like that. I know that's easy for me to say, but it's just like, it's crazy. People just expect constant conflict as a normal part of life. It's not. You know what I mean? And I had to unlearn that in my 30s, just a minute ago. Anyway, I'm going to burn 2 hours on the shorts. So,
minute. Hey, Billy, How can a single parent model this conflict resolution when you're on your own?
Great question.
Just check you got the capacity to do so. It's hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. Try and get some capacity. I don't know.
So when are the three
I'm gonna
times?
get
When
it.
are the 3 times that you need conflict resolution with your kids,
Yeah.
with other adults?
Yeah. With yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do that? You worked on that lately?
I haven't sat and worked on it proactively.
So I have,
Yeah.
and I've role modelled it. Like I'm not a single parent, but I've role modelled it on my own in front of Evie. So the way that I do that is,
What do you
like,
do?
for example, being just amazing person that helps us, which we couldn't survive without, has been away, and I've been doing the runs, which the maths doesn't work about doing drop-offs and then making it to clinic in time, so really stressed. And we dropped Charlie off first, and because everyone's like just so many angry drivers on the road, pretty much every time there's a moment of conflict where I can role model it. And Evie's so attentive now that she's like picking all of this up. And so, you know, someone will get upset or whatever, and I can then, what we call broadcast, I can broadcast with Evie about what's going on.
Oh,
She's like,
okay.
why did that person beep? And I was like, I think they're just frustrated because they're really rushing to work and they were going a bit fast, and they just wanted everyone to wait for them. But everyone else is in a rush to work as well. And I think he was just angry, and that's how he's expressing that need. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Sometimes, like, and I'll say this, and I'm being very articulate, but I've got an articulate kid who's sensitive emotionally. But I'll say that makes me angry too. I got angry at that person because he's making the road unsafe going that fast. Something like that. Alternatively as well, I also do, like, I pull out and there's a person on a bike coming and I just wave them through and she waves. And Evie literally was like, how come that lady waved at you?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because I was blocking her way, and if I kept going, she would have had to wait for me. But I wanted to let her through first because it makes me feel good about myself. And she waved to say thank you because she couldn't say it to me because I wouldn't have heard her. And so she's gestured to me, thank you. And that's healthy. Like, it's not really conflict, but it could have been.
Yeah.
So Evie's observing that, you know what I mean? And she's understanding it. And then I'm led by her. I don't then spend the rest of the 20-minute drive talking her through it because she's off now. But I'm just in little pockets trying to show her how I deal with potential conflict in my environment, also the feelings that that instills in me, the needs that I have, and then how I work on it. I give myself requests. Like, that self-compassion piece is really important, especially for people who want to always please other people. I can be like that. I don't know about you. I have 2 modes. Both of them are dysfunctional. If I think the person has power, more power than me, I go at them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because I've got this, like, you know, developmental trauma around that, and I go at them. If I think the person doesn't, I make myself as small as possible. I make myself take all the responsibility and I apologise. And then afterwards I'll beat myself up. I'm sure there's someone out there that does that. I'll be like, I should have stuck up for myself more. That person was being rude or they weren't being kind to me or whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to learn a healthier way for myself, but I'm also, you know, performing it a little bit so that Evie can see it and understand and care about it and choose it if she wants to in the future.
So much of this is like, yeah, modelling the stuff ahead of time.
Yeah,
Like
that's how
the
you...
reflective one, yeah, as opposed to like constantly having to rebuild and, hey, when you did this, I felt like that. And
Yeah, because I reckon you have a vulnerability in this because I've spoke to you about this before. You are so pro-social. You don't have any awareness of it. And the vulnerability is that your kids grow up going, it just came naturally to dad.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Because you just do, mate. You go like to the cafe, you're growing the herbs out the front of the garden, like everyone knows you on the street, all that stuff. And, you know, your girls will just be like, how does he do that? How does everyone love him? How does he have such good relationships with everyone? And, you know, you might be like, you will know how. You might be like, I work really hard. I think about it. When I get frustrated at other people, I think, is that what their actual intention was? Or am I just on edge today because I haven't slept well?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But a lot of us just internalise that and then our kids never get an opportunity to see the process that we go through.
The process, yeah. Okay, good. I like that. That's good. Well done. Hey, Billy. My child mimics my loudness in conflict. How can I change this when it's default for me?
What do you think?
you could, I don't know, you could explain to them that's just your way of communicating. Like loud, I'm trying to find what's the line between loudness and, is it just loudness? Shouting or like aggressive loudness?
Well, it's beautiful because the first question you're asking, is there a problem with this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there might not be. It might just be how they communicate and it works. It doesn't cause them mental anguish or others, and it's totally fine. If it does, like, don't accept that's your default and that's just how it's always going to be. I think a lot of people are just like, that's who I am. You know what I mean? But it's not true.
That's who we are.
Yeah, I'm just a passionate person. But it's not true, especially if it's hurting you or others. You shouldn't just accept that, and you work on it yourself first before you kind of then
teach.
Yeah, you know, don't say stop yelling just because I do it. Like, do what I say, not what I do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've stopped defaulting to that in times.
Yeah. Just do what I do.
Yeah.
Is really what's true.
Good. I'm going to keep you moving.
Yeah.
You feeling that?
Sorry. Go. No, I can feel I'm slow.
No, not slow. Hey, Billy. No, we're right, actually. I've just double-checked. We didn't start when I thought we started. I've just double-checked. Okay. Hey, Billy. Tips for talking to tweens about healthy versus toxic conflict with friends.
Yeah, so this is coming. Like, and I see a lot of kids in this situation.
What do you see?
A lot of kids that are in really unhealthy antisocial relationships and social groups, peer groups, and the kids that are like playing up, that are the bad kids, are the ones that are most vulnerable to it. Because, as I said this before, we want connection more than we want to be good.
Yep. Oh, right.
Do you know what I mean? If you didn't have a single mate and the only mate you had was a pretty unhealthy person who made fun of you all the time, had derogatory comments about other people and stuff, it'd be very hard to choose, well, I just won't have any mates, especially if you're a young kid that hasn't got full frontal lobe development, you're under 25. Do you know what I mean? So they're just like, and then you get what we know, social learning theory, you're vulnerable to start acting in the same way.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
And this is all these, like, there's been a big thing, we try not to be topical, but kicking off in Melbourne lately, and these are all just kids that have missed developmental skill sets. And so they're all running around doing antisocial behaviour, and it's the community's responsibility, not their parents. We all let them slide past us. Because we know all these kids. Like, there's an increase now in the amount of kids that are starting primary school with developmental vulnerability.
Why?
Lots of reasons. One is the pandemic. The other is access to support. A lot of two parents working without any support. Community's gone. Like, do you know what I mean? This is like, we can pick these kids really early and then we're shocked. Oh my God, teenagers that are doing this stuff, where did they come from? They came from little toddlers that weren't supported. You know, like, that's where it happens. I'll get off my soapbox. The interesting thing about, tweens is that they're moving into this phase where we understand from their social development that their peers will start mattering more than their parents. So you have to respect the relationships they have and try and help them understand, you know, what a healthy relationship looks like through role modeling, but also through discussion. Now, once again, you can use the model. This is the objective observation that I had. You know, you were really excited that Samantha was going to hang out with you. And then the last minute you came and told me that she'd decided to go and see other friends instead. How did you feel about that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I can do it. Yeah. It felt really ordinary.
Yeah. That must feel really crummy. I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Yeah. I'm annoyed.
Yeah. I would be annoyed too. So you're actually doing it really well because you're using actual feelings. Whereas if you were like, she's a bad person, or it's my fault because I'm not cool enough, then I'd be like,
I'm not ready to hear that.
But do you know what I mean? Then I would be like, no, those aren't feelings.
Oh, God, they're going to feel so much, aren't they?
Yeah. Especially our two eldest.
Yeah, they're going to feel so much. Okay.
But do you know what I mean? So you got to open up those conversations. Once again, we don't tell them. We don't say, well, Samantha's a bad person and you're never going to hang out with her again. If you do, you know, at your own peril, like you're silly or whatever. Trying to understand. I think you have a need to have social connections. Like, you have a need to want people to like you. I have that need too.
Yeah, totally.
You know, sometimes, and you can use self-disclosure sometimes. Like, you got to be careful you don't overdo it. But yeah, I struggle with this too as well. I sometimes think it's my fault. Why do you have to be careful
if it's stuff like, I struggle with this? Because I would say that frequently if I was conscious enough to say it.
because it's one of the many like dysfunctional things that we can do when we're trying to repair what someone's going through is that we, and I'm the most vulnerable to this, we make it about us.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you know
That's
what I
why.
mean?
That's why self-disclosure. It's not about oversharing. And
Yeah, well, we've talked a lot about like, say, the mistake we make where we go straight to problem solving.
Yeah.
We can also be dismissive, minimise it, make it all about us. There's lots of different ways.
Completely understand. I think you're saying self-disclosure is like there needs to be a healthy barrier between what your kids can comprehend sort of thing and what you share.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
definitely.
mean?
But you can do like, so no, this is really relevant. God, we may as well just not do the longs. No, this is beautiful. Like, how do you pick how much to talk about the difficulties that you've had in your life, including your childhood with your kid?
That's right. Like, you know, like how do you know to share things that like, I don't have teenagers, but like if we're straying. Yeah, but like, how much do you share? Like, so you...
About your own internal conflicts.
Okay, let's just, because you've publicly spoken about it really frequently, right? Conflict in your house, it's not the house and environment you're trying to create that you had as a kid, but how much would you share with Evie and when about what you've seen as a kid, which is harrowing?
Yeah,
and
so
you've
I would
told us
talk
before.
totally. I wouldn't be like, sort of, I'm getting beaten up in front of me, you know what I mean? I'd be like...
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you would.
No.
But I'm also like,
I might when she's an adult, if I'm lucky enough to be around. Because I want to help. Do you know what I mean? I want to help. Like, that's the big fear. Well, that's the big fear that I have. I've spoken to Annalise about this. And Annalise is really beautiful about it, actually, because I was like, you know, one of the things I worry about this every day. I'm like, that I'm not going to be around for these kids. Like, you know, and Annalise is like, of course you worry about that. Like, because you lost your mum. Like, you know, like, God. Yeah, I'm like just over 10 years off where my mum died. And I'm like, oh, man. I don't know about you, I'm like, I've had kids too late. Like, I need to get them to adulthood. Like, I want to be around and all that stuff. And so those fears in us, but I can't say that to Evie now. You know what I mean? If Evie's like, if I'm really struggling because I'm like, I don't get enough time with Evie, and then I sit down and go, you know why I don't get enough time with you, Evie? Because I'm, you know, and you know why I'm worried about it and stressed about it? Because this happened. It's got to be developmentally appropriate. What I want to help her do is understand. What's the appropriate level for her to understand? And especially with teenagers, I have to make sure that they don't feel like it's their fault. So that happens a lot in conflict in homes, is the kids feel like it's their fault. Like, I felt like it was my fault that my parents separated. I spent a lot of my teenage years like trying to repair it and doing crap like that, like trying to repair how my mum was going. Like, you know, you've got to help them have a level of understanding that helps them make sense of it in their mind, whatever they're struggling with. So Evie guides me. If I'm having a really tough week, I've got to make sure that I explain it to her so that she can actually pick it up and understand. Dad's just sleeping poor because he's got a lot going on. Not, Dad's really worried that his childhood trauma is being repeated in the way that he's raising us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got to give it to them in a language that they can understand and realise it's not their fault. Do you know what I mean? So Evie's doing this thing at the moment, which just came up in questions, where something goes wrong and she goes, it's my fault, Dad. She just defaults to it. And I've got to validate that experience, but I've got to get to the point where she realises it's not her fault. Do you know what I mean? That's a vulnerability in her at the moment, that she's taking the blame for everything. You know, and that'll be coming from a place, but that triggers me because I'm like, yeah, I thought everything was my fault when I was growing up. You know what I mean? I wasn't a good enough son. And that's why the house was struggling so much. You know, and I still look back. I'm sure there's lots of listeners that still look back on a lot of the stuff that I did. I'm like, man, I was like doing some really bad stuff. And I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I've got to have some self-compassion and go, I was a kid who'd been through some pretty heavy stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, go.
Okay, sure. Okay. Hey, how do we be okay with another person never saying sorry after conflict settles?
Yeah, there's a really beautiful thing that we're going to close on actually that talks to this. But yeah, that can't be the objective. The objective can't be, I want them to say sorry, like, because that's a demand that might not be met and you're setting yourself up for failure. It really needs to be internal, what your goal is. I need to express my feelings and my needs to this person and give them an opportunity. But yeah, we talked a lot about like we shouldn't force kids to say sorry, but you've got to be careful if your expectation is the other person doing a certain thing. Do you know what I mean? It can't be the goal. If I'm like...
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. So
Can't be.
So yeah, you just
Can't
can't
control
you
that.
can't. You can understand that that's triggering for you,
Give
but
opportunities.
it's got to be like we are interpersonal in the way that we are wired. That relationships matter to us, but we've got to be careful that our own mental health is not controlled by others. So, like from a non-violent communication perspective, I'm responsible for my feelings, not your behaviour, and you're not responsible. Your behaviours are not responsible for my feelings. So if you do something and I feel angry, I've still got to work on, we talked about this last time, we've still got to work on, as in the future, Eb, we've still got to work on like those feelings I'm trying to be in control of, not blame you for me being angry. You didn't say sorry. I'm having a crap day now. I had such a crap week because I spoke to you last week and you still haven't apologised.
So my feelings are my responsibility.
Yeah.
Your behaviour is yours.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying sorry. I can't blame you for then me having a crap week. That's on me as an adult. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Not getting what you wanted.
Yeah, it's just we set up. It goes back to that idea of whether people are good or bad. I really struggle with that. I really struggle putting people in boxes, but it's not. It's so complex, and I can never understand actually what's going on internally for someone and why they've acted in a certain way. All I can control is my own feelings, and what I'm trying to help through half of the episodes we've talked about is I'm trying to help Evie and Charlie develop the ability to have some control over their emotions. Okay. And yeah, we'll talk a bit more about it as well.
Okay. Hey, Billy, what do you do when you've modelled everything and your child still doesn't use the tools?
Yeah, you just keep going. Do you know what I mean? You can't put, there's not a, like we talk a lot about like you should see some benefit in 2 to 4 weeks of behavioural interventions. If you don't, it's because you haven't been consistent enough or the stretch is too much. But also with this stuff is really complex. Like think about how hard it is for us to undo it.
So the stretch is too much, so maybe drop the demand?
Yeah, make it simpler, easier to achieve requests. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm doing it at the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to do stuff.
The way that I think about it is like, say we really cared about the bath. We don't. But say we really cared about Charlie throwing out the bath. I wouldn't be like he never does that again. That's the goal because that's him not doing something, which is never what we aim for. But I also wouldn't be like he plays perfectly in the bath. I would be like for 5 minutes when I'm there supporting them, he plays really well and he's really like not throwing water in his face, not throwing water out of the bath and all that stuff. And then I celebrate that with him. And then that helps wire that pathway in his brain. And, you know, it's got to be achievable goals, especially with teenagers, because we put this like moral perfection on teenagers that they have to be perfect. And if they're not, they're doomed. And they just can't achieve that.
Okay, cool. Hey, Billy, does conflict need to be resolved before bed? Oh, great question.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, it's that old thing. It's like, no, I don't reckon it does.
Yeah, great. Why not?
Oh, it's just pressure on a shit time
beautiful.
of day. It's such a bad time of day.
Yeah.
I'll never say yes to that. People have heard me.
It's funny these really
109
unhealthy beliefs that like catchphrases. There's this amazing woman that I'll talk about in a future ep that talks about how like cleanliness is next to godliness and just how unhelpful that is, how much that puts pressure on people to be like, oh, it's really, like I'm like that. I just feel like I'm failing at life if the house isn't clean.
Oh.
And it's like, she has this beautiful thing, which I'll use in the future, where she's like, our spaces are meant to serve us, we're not meant to serve them. Casey Davis, I think.
Is it Marie Kondo? No.
No. She's different to that. She's very different to that. But we'll talk about it in a future ep.
Okay.
But no, so you're right. It's too much pressure to be like, you know, it has to be resolved before bed.
Yeah.
And also sometimes you need rest to actually take perspective.
Yeah.
You need the emotional heat to die down.
Your tanks are low your tanks are low at night and man, I can't resolve anything. Like, I try not to do anything before I have a coffee. Decisions before a coffee. Well, I'm not even joking. This isn't for a while. I'm like, I'm not clear until I'm kick-started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to hit, there's a bit of too much information, you and I used to hit the road, there's a massive road between us that has this truck stop, and it was like,
Amazing.
I don't know, there must be 15 shots of coffee per coffee in that thing. It was,
It's the best coffee.
yeah, I reckon
Still,
the first year of our podcast was fueled by that coffee.
yeah. We were so productive.
Yeah. It was amazing. But yeah, so you have to have the resources to be able to resolve it through the steps that we're using. And at the end of the long day, don't put pressure on yourself. Be like, we can't go to bed angry.
Billy, last short, then we're into 7 longs and 1 defeat.
Two advice, two reflection.
Okay. Hey, Billy, how do you get an adult to recognise their wounds are in the way of their peace?
Isn't that beautiful? I was just like, that is such a beautiful thing that just came through Instagram.
Makes me think about that scene in Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I know.
Great example. Why did that work?
Because why did that work? Gave them time and space to react to it.
Yeah.
And kept reinforcing that it's not your fault.
Yeah, but what did Robin Williams do to get to that point?
Oh, well, tons and tons and tons of work. Was it 6 weeks of therapy they had to do together?
Yeah. But connection, safe space, unconditional support.
Yep.
He did all that, didn't he?
Wouldn't have reacted well on day one.
Didn't take stuff personally. He cracks it once about the painting.
Yeah.
But, he has a normal emotional response, but sticks with him. And he's like, I'm not giving up on you.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Whether it's a kid or an adult.
Let's get a rewatch. Sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, but you know what I mean? If you had this, I wouldn't be like, we're sitting down and having a talk about how your wounds are getting in the way of your peace.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, Nick has gone through some stuff. I need to support him, show him what a healthy relationship is, be unconditionally around him, connect with him, gently say how you're going.
Yeah, and you can only offer them the time and space and support, and they can only say no.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah,
Which
I've
is a
failed
tough
at that
watch.
in some of the people I love the most in my life because I just too aggressively went towards trying to help them.
You try to help people.
Well, yeah, God, it sounds like I'm amazing. No, it's just I care about relationships a lot and they were dysfunctional ones. So I was like, I need this to be better.
Yep.
But do you know what I mean? Like, say you'd gone through something, I would eventually get to the point in a really safe space where I'd be like, how do you think you're going? And if you were like, fine, mate, I'd be like, mate, you're such a beautiful human and I really worry that you have like so much turmoil in your life that you don't deserve. I don't think it's your fault. You seem to be angry a lot, and upset, and then you beat yourself up about things. I don't think that's your fault. I think it's what's happened to you. I want to be a part of helping you heal that process. I'll help you in whatever way you need me to be. But it's even MVC's got this beautiful approach they talk about with people trying to give up smoking. And he's like talking to a mate and he's like, gets to the point where the guy's like, I just feel like I'm a failure, so it's not even worth trying every time I stuff it up and everyone's looking at me like I've failed at life.
Oh, wow.
It's like, that must be awful. If you want to try again, I'll support you. If it doesn't work, I won't see you as a failure. I'll see you as someone who's trying really hard to overcome something that's really difficult.
Oh, I've got to keep that default at home.
But you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's a good default.
But yeah, what a privilege we have to journey with. Like, I've got you, Annalise, 2 gorgeous kids that I'm just have the privilege of like hopefully knowing for the rest of my life, and I will unconditionally support you because I know that will enrich my life. I won't put limits on it and say, well, Nick's got to sort that out by 6 months. Evie's got to get on top of her emotions before she gets to primary school. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm just like, I'll be there with whatever comes through the door, still have Lord of the Rings, and then, for as long as you need me, I'll support you. That's how you do that. That's how you heal people and help them when they've got wounds that are getting in the way of their peace.
Great way to finish the shorts, Billy. Now let's rip into the longs.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. I'll be tight, I promise.
Right.
Because the longs are often about, the best bit about longs is not my
Is the
answer. It's
story.
Yeah. So I'll just give quick answers.
Hi, guys. I was stumbling through with Nick on this one. Did the old double listen, pause, rewind, repeat, jotting notes, finally grasped the 7 steps. Glad 3 were repeated. Oh, God. I am a stay-at-home mum of a 3.5-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old son. I feel like it's the one thing knowing the steps and actually putting them into practice. How can I age appropriately implement this when the 1.5-year-old always takes what the 3.5-year-old has, pulls hair, super grabby, etc.? I feel like the objective observer and feeling stuff is gold with a 3.5 and feeling stuff is gold with a 3.5-year-old helps diffuse the situation. But what strategies can I use in the later steps? In the later steps, considering the 1.5-year-old is too young to understand the specific request, like, wouldn't it be really cool if your brother gave it back to you? But I want to teach my 3.5-year-old how to deal with it. Double dipping here. Why is avoiding conflict not okay when it's smaller scale, say like a dog poo, for instance? Conflict with people that aren't close to me makes me feel uncomfortable, so I'd rather not engage. But I want to empower my daughter to be assertive. Thanks for the hard yards you're both doing. On the dog poo one, this is where resolving conflict with someone whose dog poos in front of you and how you'd appropriately have the conversation, and it's in our previous episode.
Yeah, so I stepped through it, but it's totally fine to be like, you don't have to be like the moral police. And it's often a sign of early neurodiversity is little kids that are like little policemen that don't understand. They're like, you stepped out of bounds. Like, at the schoolyard, I've got to go tell the teacher, and they just have that. And I'm like that. I'm like, I'm very good at like putting my morals over other people, just not on myself. But it's because that's a need in me that I do that. I have a need about like the environment and people being kind to each other and all that stuff. So I constantly battle the need of like too much conflict, making other people feel uncomfortable, not talking down to people, versus if I just leave it, then I beat myself up and I'm like, do you actually care about the environment? You don't actually, call people out and say, hey, could you please, whatever. But it's fine. It is a good way for me to role model for Evie though. Like how to do it in a healthy way and how to assert my values and my feelings and my beliefs. So in a way that's healthy, that doesn't fracture opportunities for partnerships with people, including strangers. The 1.5-year-old is really interesting. So the 1.5-year-old, we know that tantrums, for want of a better word, start emerging at about 18 months and get better by 4 to 5. The reason they start emerging at 18 months.
Such a big window. Sorry.
Totally. But why do they start then?
Frustration, communication frustration.
Communication's part of it, so they get the ability to influence the environment better through communication and mobility.
Yeah, okay.
So they get to the developmental stage where they're not just sitting. Yeah. They can go and influence things. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Okay. So they can act out and they see the response of throwing all the bath water out. By the time they get to 4 to 5, they start developing theory of mind, the ability to the person has feelings and perspective and blah, blah, blah. And that's when it starts getting better. The reason I'm saying that is one of the mistakes I made in the first episode is that you need to work on all 7 steps, but you don't. You can just pick, like I do with Charlie, you can just pick the feelings bit. And so what I'm trying to help him understand now, and he's behind in his language, but I'm trying to help him understand basic language around feelings because I need him to have that. Like I said last time, we don't get taught that. Did you get taught feelings in school? Do you know what I mean?
No.
We learn a lot about like how other people are and what we call them and all that stuff. We're not very good at just naming our feelings. So I'm trying to help Charlie with that through moments that he struggles, moments that he succeeds, story time, pretend play, feelings. Like I'm just trying to help him with feelings. I'm also trying to scaffold for him how to successfully interact with Evie. Evie's amazing. She doesn't really lash out at him or anything, and he does all the time. And sometimes, like 5% of the time, Evie will get upset. She never lashes out back at him. I've got to be careful that Evie doesn't just be like, well, I can never stick up for myself. So I pick the specific things that both of them need to work on that are developmentally appropriate. With younger kids, this person's right, and people gave us feedback. You don't have to use as much language as I am. You can just think about, like, how do I just help a kid understand what objectively happened, that it wasn't anyone's fault? Charlie, you took the bowl out of Evie's hand. She's now angry. Simple. That might be the only thing I'm working on. That's the steps. Not getting anywhere through need and not getting to request or whatever. Or I might go, could you please give it back to her? And if she doesn't, he's 18 months. I'm not like, oh, cool. Just like I don't let him run across the road because I'm like, it's a request. I have certain boundaries around stuff, but it's my responsibility if it's failed to get in earlier and scaffold it better for them to interact pro-socially. Do you know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. Like that's how you do it with an 18-month-old. But yeah, the vulnerability, especially in my style, is you use a lot of language, but you don't. I had this beautiful girl the other day. She's one of my favourite kids I see in clinic. She's gone through horrible, these beautiful parents. She's autistic. She has an intellectual disability, and I've known her since pretty much she was born. And her amazing mum was like, she doesn't really speak, and her amazing mum was like, she doesn't communicate with us. And I was like, I totally know what you're saying. She communicates heaps. I'm like, she's come in the room, she's lit up to see me, she's coming and holding my hand, like she's doing all this beautiful stuff. We just fall into a trap sometimes of thinking that most of our communication is verbal, but it's not. Like right now, you're communicating with me with a way that's connecting purely off your facial expressions. You might do it in body language, you might do it in gestures. So we've got to think about like, how do I help the 18-month-old just through non-verbal stuff understand that the feelings are okay and what are pro-social behaviours, and how we respond in our own non-verbal communication is really important as well. It's probably like a whole 2 episodes I've tried to put into like 2 minutes, but yeah, hopefully give some guidance.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, dear Nick and dear Dr. Billy and Nick, I just want to express my sincere thanks to you both and the Guiding Growing Minds team for all your work. As an assistant principal and educator who works closely with staff and families, I found your recent episode on the notebook and conflict resolution insightful, especially the way you unpacked learned conflict behaviours. It resonated with me. I'm writing this at 11 p.m. after a typical long day that included teaching, an evening school event, supporting a staff member in responding to a domestic violence issue involving one of our students, police were involved, and getting my own kids to bed. That said, there were also highlights. Fantastic lesson, student leaders owning parts of the school's annual implementation plan, some everyday kindness from students, and above and beyond moments from our staff. Like many educators, I live in a busy space where the personal and professional and unpredictable collide, so I value anything that helps with efficiency and effectiveness. One tool I've found really effective in working with students around conflict is a simple one: fessing up. I frame it like this: we all make mistakes. I make hundreds every day. But when you put your hand up and own your part, big or small, it helps us all move forward, and it usually gets you out of 90% of the trouble you're in. Whether it's a fight, friendship breakdown, or a misunderstanding, this often helps students take the first step. Sometimes it takes a few attempts to get there, but once they do it, it becomes a much easier way to support. It becomes so much easier to put supports in place and minimise any required consequences due to their honesty. But here's my question: is a small group of students who absolutely refuse to acknowledge responsibility, even when confronted with video evidence of their actions, fight or sustained bullying. Sometimes it is the parents instead, or even both. They double down or deny, and it makes conflict resolution nearly impossible because we can't even agree on the basic facts. Why might this be happening? Is it fear, shame, trauma, something else? What might shift the response over time? Thanks again for your thoughtfulness, honesty, and humour you bring to your work. It genuinely helps. Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like,
what do you do?
So yeah, firstly, like just a shout out to educators. They're being asked to do more and more and not given any more resources. So I like strongly advocate for better supports in schools and get to do a little bit of it myself. Yeah, so it's a real challenge. I think firstly, like I kind of understand why you're doing it. And if you think it does help with that objectivity, kind of showing the evidence of what happened, but it's hard to kind of back someone into a corner. Do you know what I mean?
Come out fighting.
Just like, yeah, and so they'll obviously get on the back foot and be like, you know, this is how I'm going to handle it. I think that what you need to think about and try and learn is there's an unmet need in those kids and families. And my best guess would be that they don't feel like they're a part of that community. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of teens that are antisocial in school environments, when you actually get to know them, they'll often say like, you know, I'm angry because I'm not respected, not valued. They're just always coming down on me. And really what they're deeply saying is that I'm not a part of this community, or I'm a conditional part of it. If I behave, I'm, you know, I'll be allowed to stay the full day, or I'll be allowed to do stuff, sit in the classroom. But the moment I struggle a bit, I just get punishments, you know. And so really gently having a conversation with the teenagers and the parents about this. And there's a beautiful restorative practice component to that, of just saying like, I'm so sorry that this has happened, that you feel like the school's not supporting you. What can we do to repair it? You know, and with those parents, you've got to make sure that your ratio of interactions with them is like the majority positive. Because often those parents are like, at school, my kid's in trouble. Teacher's coming over to me, kid stuffs up. You know, and they then have this hostile relationships when educators, you know, they don't do it for the money. They don't do it to get in fights with parents. They don't do it to get in fights with kids. They do it because they really care about kids, but they just completely overwhelm themselves with behavioural. Like behavioural difficulties in schools is the number one reason that educators leave the profession early.
Yeah, drive me away.
I got
bloody hell.
14 and a half years of training in this stuff. Like, unfortunately, they don't have a lot of training in it. And so, you know, how do you think about how to do that better and meet that need? But there'll be a need.
That's a ripper.
And you just want to safely explore it with them. And once again, it's a request. I want to have a conversation with you. I feel like we're not supporting you well enough. What's going on for you in this school? How do you feel about school? Like going back to what I said last time, school should not be you have to go. It should be you want to go because you get such benefit out of it. And if the kid is not having that experience, find out why. It's not on educators. I'm a developmental paediatrician. That's what I do. I find out why. Why is this kid? And it'll be trauma, anxiety, ADHD, learning difficulties, autism, you know, lack of environmental exposure, whatever. There'll be a reason that's never he's just a bad kid or they're just a bad parent. You find that reason and meet that need, and then every single kid in that environment will benefit from it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a beautiful privilege that I get to meet these kids and then eventually say goodbye to them. Which is like,
that's, you know, that wasn't my default way. I think that's a great way.
Yeah, this teacher's
You've got
amazing.
good defaults.
But they just, well, yeah, I mean, I say this stuff like 14 times a day to kids that I meet. So
it's good.
Yeah, if I wasn't, yeah.
Sing it.
Yeah. Should, yeah.
Hey, Billy, question 3. Hi, guys. Another good ep. You right, mate?
Yeah.
Short question. I notice when you describe the steps to conflict resolution, when people start explaining how they feel as part of it, I start feeling under pressure to make them feel better despite what I actually want to do, etc. It feels like it can be potentially be an emotional manipulation. I'm not sure if that's because I'm unfortunately a people pleaser, as many of us are, and perhaps it's a thing that people pleasers do to be wary of. Thanks again. I binged all the eps last year and now find it a bit hard waiting every 2 weeks for the next one. I very much appreciate all the time it takes for you both.
So it goes back to a little bit what I was saying before of like, we shouldn't take responsibility for other people's feelings. You know, they can help us reflect on how we are being with them and whether we really care about them. We're not succeeding at that because they feel angry or sad or whatever. The other thing is there's 4 ways we can respond to criticism.
Okay.
So one is we get on the attack.
Yep.
We blame them.
Yep.
Second is we blame ourselves, like what this person's talking about.
Yep.
Third is that we check in and think about our own feelings and needs.
That sounds like a good one.
Fourth is that we check in and think about the feelings and needs of the other person.
Okay.
We got, first time ever, hopefully this doesn't cause a flood of them coming in, we got a negative review, written review, and it was like, just saying the same thing over and over again. I can't remember it, but it was like, you know, you don't take on feedback, it's just fake. Something like that. And intentionally when I read it, I went through anger of like, blame the person. I was like, do you know how much time I put into this? Like, then I went through blame myself. I was like, I've been screwing it up. Should have done it better. And the person's like, I'm never listening again. Okay. And I was like, I've lost that person. I've stuffed it up. I wonder where it was. And I like scrutinized all the feedback we've got. I was like, God, which person was it? God, I need to think about the podcast and do it better and all this stuff. And then I actually went, well, then do you know what I did? Yeah. Thanks to you and everyone else. I went, what feelings am I having in this moment? I'm feeling angry, you know, feeling inadequate, like a failure, and blah, blah, blah. The need in me is that like I put so much into this, I want it to pay off. Like I want to be liked by people. I want to feel like I'm helping.
Appreciate it.
Then I was able to go, I wonder how that person's feeling. They're feeling pretty angry. They've taken the time to write that in. they've been slighted by something, and just because I didn't see it and might not have intended it, there's been something that's happened, and they have a need to have their voice heard, whatever. And the thing that I'm trying to do is see, can I actually grow out of it? Now, it's hard because it's not a dialogue. But if someone came up to me and said that to me, I would be like, I'd try and check it past those first two responses that I might have, get to my own feelings. Well, I'm feeling a bit angry and attacked, but I actually care about this. So I'd be like, hey, I really appreciate that. Tell me what you're feeling. And if you're like, the podcast sucks, you don't listen, I'd be like, no, those aren't feelings. I'd be like, what's your feeling? I'm feeling angry. Are you feeling angry because you've sent in feedback and we didn't change the podcast? They might be like, yes. I'd be like, I'm really sorry about that. Can you let me know what it was? They might be like, no, it's not that. I'll be like, well, is it because you're feeling really sad because you implemented something we spoke about and it didn't work? No, it's not that. Okay, well, I'm really trying hard to understand what's happened. Can you help me understand what's going on? And they might say something else, and I'll be like, okay, well, how about this step? You know what I mean? It might be something really helpful. And then they go, yeah, okay. And I'll be like, would you mind keep listening? And I'm going to try and work on that. And I'm going to have a shot at it next time. And you let me know through feedback if it actually worked. Yeah, okay, reluctantly. I'm like, hey, I really appreciate that. The PCP community is the strongest thing about the pod. I want it to be good. And I really appreciate you going to the effort to do this. You know what I mean? That's how I get growth out of it. I'm not having a conversation with that person, but I can actually take that criticism on. The interesting thing is most of the people I speak to have much bigger platforms than us. I'm like, how do you handle the negative criticism? And they're like, we just ignore it. And I'm like, I understand that from a protective point of view, but I'm like, how do you know if you can do it better though? Yeah. But you've helped me with this. At the start of the podcast, I wouldn't sleep because we'd get negative feedback. I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, go through my feelings, think about the other person's feelings, and then see, is there an opportunity of growth in it?
That's tremendous.
Well, it's so much work. It's taken me a lot of work to get there. Don't believe me. That's probably the first bit of negative criticism I've been able to do that with. I've had people accuse me of increasing family violence, because of stuff that I've been doing. You know what I mean? That still sits with me. The worst part, the person was like, at the end of the email, they're like, I didn't want to send this email, but that's okay. And I'm like, oh, that's a classic catchphrase of abusive people, of I do something bad to you, and then I'm like, it's okay that this happened. I'm like, I tell you that you're okay with what I've done to hurt you. It's just I still haven't healed from that bit of feedback. That was years ago. Whereas this bit, I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, but I'm using this strategy. I'm using a framework. It's not like some innate genetic thing in me that I either have or don't have. I've worked on it as an adult. So I want to help Evie and Charlie and the next bub that's coming developmentally appropriately go through that process so they don't go through 3 years of a podcast and not sleeping because negative feedback comes in, to get to the point where they're like, cool, I've actually got a framework that I can take criticism and respond to it.
Well done on you for evolving.
But you were always good at this.
No.
You've always been able to be like, well, mate, you don't know what's going on with them.
Yeah, but there's a big difference about the effort put into this podcast and the 14 and a half years, and all.
Well, no, it's also the criticism's always at something I've said. It's never been.
Because what? Yeah, okay. I was going to make it about me. No, I'm not doing that. So.
No, but you are very good at this. You and Annalise have both helped me be able to process this by validating the experience I'm having and then helping me go through that process. Yep. But that's the first bit of negative feedback I've been able to get to the point where I can actually use the framework.
God. Well done.
Thank you.
Hey, Billy, question 4. Heineken. Billy, g'day, you legends. I only discovered the pod about 2 weeks ago, so I'm not 100% sure if this is a reflection or a long one. But I'll be sure to put up a clear question at the end. I'm about to turn 40, and 30 years ago, I was living in a trailer park with holes punched through a few of the walls. So conflict is a sensitive topic for me. The episode will help me in a work capacity too, not just with the kids. First thing, I haven't read this by the way. First thing, if I could, would be to give a shout out to all the single mums out there. Quick background, when I was 10, the man I thought was my dad sent some death threats to the house and threatened to kidnap me from school. So my mum told me the truth, that he wasn't really my dad. That's when I learned that when my genetic dad learned of my birth, he just hung up the phone. A few years after that, my mum remarried and had my brother. Sadly, we were in a car accident and my brother passed away. She spent 2 years in rehab. On the night of the accident, the ambulance took me to her to say goodbye. But she's a fighter. She came back from over 100 broken bones. Later in life, she retrained. She now runs a department in a hospital. Things didn't work out with my stepdad. Guilt, shame, booze, and two grieving parents treating a tragedy in two very different ways made things unworkable. She was an advocate for getting help to express how she and I felt. He just buried himself in work and the bottle. My mother remarried when I was in my 20s to the most generous, quirky, fun, ambitious man I've ever met, and he helped me change my perspective on life. They are still together happily. Sometimes the universe gets things right. Throughout it all, one thing stayed true. My mum's unconditional love for me. No matter how bad things were, I always had a rock that let me build my foundation. As a 16-year-old, getting a hug from my mum on the side of the footy pitch after a game was the best feeling. She came to every game she could. As an adult now, with 2 kids, a loving wife, and a half-decent job and life, I still think a lot of luck has broken my way. I wouldn't be here without it, but I wouldn't be here without sacrifices and love given to me by my mum. I'd just say to everyone who needs it, never give up. Without one lady's unconditional love, I could have easily been another statistic. On the question, the younger of my 2 is a bit on the sensitive side. He is scientific proof of the butterfly effect. Something minor happens in the bedroom and 15 minutes later there is a Category 5 cyclone rolling through the living room. So this week my wife is away. On the face of it, he's been absolutely fine, not asking for mum at all. But all of a sudden, his socks don't fit right, his nappy is too tight, he doesn't like his shoes, and he needs all 15 toys in bed. I know what he says is not really the issue. I can't rationally win the argument by saying he loved his shoes 3 days ago, or these are the socks he always wears. But I also don't have 60 minutes to get to the root cause, and that's even if the 3-year-old could articulate it. Does he really know why he's sad? He's really fragile, so I don't want to strong-arm him into clothes he hates. I just let him wear his gumboots to kindy the other day without socks, which ended up giving him blisters. FML. What do you do when the issue of conflict is not really the reason for the fight? Are there any tips that will help in the moment? Are bribes and threats able to be used for expediency? And will they cause damage to my sensitive soul? Love the work and working my way through the back catalogue and my own issues. Teared up at work going through the Fight Club episodes. Cheers.
Sorry, I always forget that I've given you the questions like 30 minutes before we start recording. God. Yeah, what an amazing man and dad. And massive shout out to all the single mums there. So yeah, I'll give this person something helpful that I do myself with another sensitive soul, and you will not damage that child and I will not damage mine because of our previous trauma, and their sensitive soul will be well equipped because we've done our own healing to meet their needs. A couple of things. So yes, you can do the format that we talked about, you know, I think you're feeling like this and it's because mummy's away. The other thing that you can do, which is really helpful in part of this process and a lot of the broader work that we talk about, is just have that feeling with them. Do you ever try that with the girls? Where like...
Is it like co-regulation?
The boots are being annoying and I get annoyed at the boots too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Henry does that. I don't, yeah.
But do you know what I mean? It's a really important thing that often we see them get angry or frustrated, especially if we're like trying to get at the house or something, and we direct our anger towards them and we try and bite our teeth, grit our teeth and be like, God, I'm getting really annoyed. But if you actually, often what happens with Evie, if I get angry at the same thing she's getting angry at and just validate the experience she's having, then all of the win comes out of it.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Because she's not battling me as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, that is really annoying. And I help her through the steps that we've talked about, just with one component of it, articulating and understanding her feelings. Do you know what I mean? You're really angry because of that. And if I want to, I can choose sometimes to explore, is this because mummy's not here? I feel like you might be really missing mummy.
Yeah.
And then it's trying to help her. But she might be like, it's not that. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you start with that, that's how it might wind up.
Yeah. Whereas I want to help. Yeah. So go through the validation and all that stuff of the feelings, which I'm sure this person's doing. But the rewards, we'll do a specific episode on it because, it's come up so many times on rewards and punishments. But
I'm paying out so many gold coins at the moment, Billy, and they've got no meaning.
Making it right.
Because then they just lose them and I go and pick them up again and re-gift them. I just kind of... Like, I've got $7 and 4 days later I've got the $7. I'm like, here's another one. And it's the circular economy, but they don't seem to care.
No, as in they don't seem to care that the same money's coming back.
It's not like they spend it. They don't see us spend money anyway. They tap everything.
Well, they'll care more about you getting excited and interacting with them than they will about the money. Which, if they can keep that going for the rest of their life, they'll be doing better than the rest of us.
Okay. Right, I can see where the reward stuff then. Yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, because a lot of people are very black and white about it, but we'll do it in the future.
Okay. Got to keep us moving.
Yeah.
Hey, Billy, question 5. Can you please provide a script for when the need is dopamine? My beautiful ND 9-year-old will often create conflict as a form of dopamine seeking. If I've missed the early warning signs and we find ourselves in the midst of a blow up, how can I use the framework to help de-escalate and help my daughter regulate?
Beautiful question. Do you know much about, which is completely understandable, you know, dopamine and reward pathways?
No.
So dopamine is one of the main neurotransmitters that influences brain pathway wiring. For example, like you have internal dopamine seeking things such as hunger or thirst, and you have external things such as, sometimes people will use anger and go towards it, and that's a dopamine reinforcing thing. Or such as you just see an external trigger such as food. And you go, I wasn't that hungry, but there's food here, so I'll eat it. And then that will influence dopamine drive. And they can compete with each other. We know the studies through lots of research, which has put dopamine triggers electrodes into brains, and say a rat hits a lever and it wires dopamine and gives them a dopamine kick. What will happen is that they will, if they have to choose between the lever and food, they will starve, because they'll just keep hitting the lever, because dopamine drivers are so powerful. Like there's an evolutionary component of it because it made sure we ate and did all those things. Yes. So, and we should do a whole episode, because one thing I always go back to is that I talked about neurodiversity from like an advocacy perspective. I didn't talk much about how to help them. So if people would like it, I'm more than happy to do that as a whole app. How do you actually help neurodiverse kids? And
I think people would love that.
Yeah, it'd be a really cool one to do, and maybe we should do it soon.
Yep.
Understanding that. So this parent's amazing because they actually understand the dopamine stuff and dopamine seeking, and a lot of kids who are neurodivergent will dopamine seek through sensory seeking. So like certain textures, certain things will make them feel good and give them that drive, and so they'll seek it. The trick is, like, if you're finding that a kid is dysfunctionally doing that, dopamine seeking, find a slightly more functional dopamine seeking mechanism to meet that need.
Example?
So an example is like the kid.
They probably want a screen.
Yeah,
well, I'm
assuming. Screen. Well, let's do like.
I don't know. I'm just assuming.
So a kid is punching when they get distressed.
Gotcha.
And getting angry.
Yep.
How do you give them a physical outlet that meets that dopamine need when they get distressed, that just shifts slightly away from hurting themselves or someone else to still heaps a level of physicality? And this is what like a lot of schools do really well, where they're like, go do a hot lap of the Oval, come to like Rebecca Harris, the only guest we've had, taught me this years and years and years ago. She's phenomenal. She's doing stuff with Guiding Growing Minds as well. So if people are interested, she's amazing and doing stuff for us. She had a room, and every school should have a room where the kids go and they have an outlet to do whatever they need to do to get that dopamine kick. Jump up and down, scream, whatever. And then she would connect with them. And then they would successfully transition back into the classroom. And like principal that you know, good mate of mine, that's what his office is. His office is where kids come when they're struggling, and where staff come when they're struggling, and where parents come when they're struggling. And he's just got a beautiful way that he talks about they need a space to have that experience. And we need to, often what we do with kids is we block all of their options. We just go, stop doing that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And then they just have no way to get that need met, whether it's a dopamine trigger or whatever. So they, reinforce other reward pathways to get that need met, especially in neurodivergent kids.
Gotcha.
But we'll do a whole app on it.
Clearly, I didn't understand what dopamine was when I gave my screen example, so I totally understand a little bit more now, and I can't wait for the episode.
Yeah, totally. But no, it can be. So yeah, we'll talk about that more.
Sorry, yeah. That's why we need the episode, Billy. You haven't taught me. So
yeah, but I
that's on you.
dysfunctionally use screens. But do you know what I mean? I said to you, I was reading for this, and I was just stressed about it because I was like, I'm not going to make it in time. I've got to get this through to Nick. I've got to go to bed and get enough sleep and all that stuff. And every 30 seconds, I went to my phone because I was just like stressed, and it would take that. I was dissociating and take the stress off me.
Hey, Billy.
I needed to meet the need, not my phone use.
Yep. Hey, Billy. Hey, you bloody legends. First of all, I want to say thank God I found your podcast. I'm a paediatric occupational therapist based in the community, so a lot of my day consists of driving around. Your podcast has helped me so much, and I navigate working with my beautiful families who have difficult upbringings and circumstances. Sorry, this is a long one. Bear with me. This episode made me reflect on a wonderful family I worked with. I support 4 siblings aged between 16 and 20 years old, all with a diagnosis of ASD and ADHD. 2 of them living with ODD too, oppositional defiance disorder.
Bang.
Yeah,
Dr. Nick.
Odd is the acronym. Sorry. A lot of goals we are working towards are developing emotional regulation, conflict resolution skills, and forming positive relationships with family members. I take a breath. I haven't read it again, so I'm trying to be buoyant. So I'll just stop talking. Hey, I'll read the question. I've been able to build a great rapport with each of the siblings. Themes of our conversations are that they don't feel heard, seen or respected by their siblings or parents, especially when conflict arises. I've tried supporting them with self-regulation strategies and how to deal with conflict when it arises, but the kids report back saying, didn't help. As I am in the house a lot during the week, I have seen firsthand how the parents speak to and deal with conflict. A lot of shouting, guilt tripping, demands, unrealistic expectations, and belittling. A lot of the time, if one sibling is getting in trouble, the others will come to the living room and join in, creating big emotions, resulting in the kids all being in a fight and flight response, which is impacting their day-to-day life. My question is, how can I support and educate these kids on conflict resolution when all these kids have been exposed to is violent communication and resolution always ending in tears, storming off, or more anger? My advice would be, any advice would be greatly appreciated. Your practical examples provide me with such a direction when supporting my families. I've literally created a handout on the steps to conflict resolution and have been teaching this to the parents I see. Life-changing stuff. They have loved it. Thanks again. You are doing amazing work. Just one thing they touched on there I think is really good. When you give the little examples, it does give such a framework to keep doing that.
Yeah.
It's like so good.
Yeah,
right,
then this person is a more powerful clinician than I am because I just don't see kids in their homes. I don't see this. I used to, and God, it was sometimes just horrific. Shout out to social workers because I used to do home visits with social workers through child protection, and you just harrowing stuff. What we often think about, especially with kids that are that age, is you worry that 90% of their life they're getting screamed at, it's violence, it's all that stuff. But, I think we undersell the power that a little life raft can be of just one person who actually genuinely cares about you and connects with you. And what I would say is I would prioritise with each of those kids just little pockets of opportunity where you pull them out of that environment, like physically, take them into even just a part of the house where there's quiet and stuff, and just connect with them. And be like, hey, this must be really hard. I can see you getting stressed. It's not really fair on you. This isn't your fault. And just give them the space to have healthy responses to that and an opportunity to feel okay about it. And then, like you're doing, use the NVC framework of just talk about your feelings. Talk about your feelings with your siblings.
Non-violent communication framework.
Talk about your feelings, talk about your needs and all that stuff. And the parents might be so entrenched that they need their own mental health support, and you want to be, as a professional to working with families, providing conduits, pathways to that. stages of change stuff, which I don't know if we've actually done, but, you know, it's really difficult when they're stuck in that pre-contemplative, like not really interested, the parents. But kids are so beautiful, especially like teenagers, that they're so reward sensitive. So I think we've talked about that before in risk taking. They're so reward sensitive that if you can give them those positive experiences, they'll just keep seeking it more and more. A bit the same as the school teacher. If you can just connect with those teens that are really antisocial and actually they feel like they have a voice and they feel like they're valued, they'll just keep coming back and seeking it. It'll take time because they'll think that initially you're playing a trick on them or you're going to abandon them as well or whatever. But if this occupational therapist, best allied health clinicians out there can kind of go in and just do that gentle work with each of them just in sanctuaries, not when all 4 kids are there, when the parents are kicking off and all that stuff, just have little protected pockets where you pull them aside and just even start with just validating their feelings and tying it to the objective thing that's just happened. Hey, your brother came in and I saw him punch you in the face. You know, if I was you, I'd be really angry about that. How do you feel about it? You probably have a need to feel safe in your own home. Like you're not going to be attacked. Yeah, I want to go and beat the crap out of him now. Yeah, I totally understand that. What do you think might happen? You know what I mean? Go through the process. If you get to that point, what do you think might be a healthier thing to do? Just to say like, hey, punch me in the face. I'm really angry because I want to be safe in this house. You know what I mean? And then if you can facilitate that, that's steps and steps and steps away though. You can't. I think what a lot of the time what people do unintentionally is they go to like the 5th step and pull kids together and go, all right, sort it out. Sort it out. You know, and you can't. You've got to earn the trust of that kid. You've got to understand their perspective. You've got to make them feel safe, give them their voice, all that stuff. And then you can get to the point where you bring another person in that you don't have complete kind of influence over how they'll react. But it's challenging. It's one of my hardest things in clinic is that I'm very good at, not very good, it sounds very arrogant. I've got a lot of experience connecting with kids, but often the parents are just so ingrained that it's all the kid's fault. My mental health will be better when that kid sorts himself out. You know, I'm not going to go and see someone. And I've had people with like suicidal teenagers that say, I just can't believe it. They won't go and they won't speak, they won't see, or they won't go and speak to a therapist. I'm like, God, that must be so hard. I was like, I'm worried you're struggling. Would you go and see someone? And they're like, it's a waste of time. And you're like, God. Of course the kid doesn't want to because like we're role model this stuff. So anyway.
Okay. Hi Nick and Billy. First of all, thank you for Pop Culture Painting Podcast. I've been listening as a piano teacher since before becoming a mum. I've now re-listened to your entire catalogue with fresh ears and a deeper appreciation as a parent. Your insights have helped me connect more meaningfully, not only with the child, but also with the students I teach. I really appreciated Billy's point in a recent episode about avoiding the phrase, you have to go to school, and instead making kids want to go. I've been thinking a lot about that and want to ask a question around conflict, compliance, and expectations. I understand it if it is a bit off topic and you don't get to my question, but it might be useful for a future episode. Bit of background, I grew up in an authoritarian household where parents who were new migrants did the best they could with the tools they had. They were under immense pressure just trying to survive. I was told, firmly but lovingly, that I must go to university and I will continue learning the piano as long as I lived at home. I didn't always like it, especially as a child navigating a new language and culture. There were plenty of days I wanted to watch TV or play with friends rather than practice scales. And yet, it was that unwavering expectation that eventually helped me find a place in school and excel in music. I became a concert pianist and later studied piano pedagogy, so I could teach at the highest level. I feel so lucky every day I get paid to do something I love. Looking back, I'm grateful for the consistency and support, even if it felt hard at times. That said, my parents were never the best models for conflict resolution. It was mostly shouting until everyone was emotionally exhausted, and I'm determined to break that cycle with my own children. Listening to your episode on love brought me to tears. Growing up, I experienced a very conditional kind of love, which led to a fractured relationship with my parents for many years. Now, we're very close, but the shift only happened when they began treating me with respect and offering unconditional love, which happened in my early 20s. I wonder if by then the pressures of survival had eased and finally had the capacity to love more freely. That's a good reflection, isn't it? Yeah. As a teacher, As a teacher, I aim to make lessons engaging and fun. And I'm proud to say my students genuinely want to come to lessons. But I also know there's a difference between playing piano and practicing it. Secret is no one really loves practicing. If I could choose a superpower, it would be to absorb music directly through my fingers so I could skip to the joy of playing. But in maturity, I've come to love the value of discipline, hard work and problem solving that practice demands. So here's my question. Is there no place anymore for holding high and firm expectations in parenting? Can we not expect kids to attend school, contribute to their household and stick with commitments even when things get tough? In trying to connect and build collaboration, how do you still nurture grit and responsibility? Thank you again for all you do. Your podcast continues to be such a grounding, empowering resource for so many parents. I truly appreciate the thoughtful way you bring psychology, pop culture and empathy together to explore the messy, beautiful work of raising good humans. You've given me language for things I've always felt but didn't know how to express, and tools I don't even realise I needed until I heard them.
Amazing question, isn't it? So
Amazing question. How do you do it? How do you give them the grit?
Yeah, so so you give them grit thinking about that's a higher order function. Like kids, as you know, like Maslow, need to feel safe and secure and have our lower level needs met. And also so that person, I don't want to speak for them, but they might reflect on whether that was functional or dysfunctional. I grew up with a lot of pressure on me and a really strong work ethic. I'm not very smart, but I go really hard at things. You know that. I just I go really, really hard at things. And dysfunctionally so. I can't celebrate wins, I can't relax, all that stuff. So I would go back, if I could, and take some of that pressure off me as a kid and just think about conflict resolution, emotional regulation and all this stuff. What is really important is I'm not saying that you, I think sometimes the gentle approach can fall into the there's no expectation of kids. But if we remember our parenting style stuff from Mean Girls, what we know is that I have high demands of myself, my relationships, my kids, but I'll always start with warmth and I'll provide them whatever support level they need to succeed at that level. Do you know what I mean? So if we're doing piano or emotional regulation or whatever, yes, put the time in, try and make it fun, try and make it purposeful, enjoy the learning process, all of that stuff. I really enjoy everything that I get to do. You know what I mean? I'm very lucky in that. There's a lot of people out there that don't. I've done a lot of those jobs in factories and stuff where there's no joy in it. It's just I have to do this task over and over again to feed my kids. But if you can think about that grit and determination comes after all that stuff is really important. It's not a threat to it.
So what you're saying is you can get to that level if you have a good foundation of all of the conditional love and support. How do you then unconditional. How do you put your foot down to take it to the next level?
Yeah, so you stretch them. That's Gotzi's zone of proximal development.
Just stretch them.
Where are they at and stretch them.
Where are they at and stretch them. Where are they at and stretch them.
Yeah, so we don't go, today's the day, swimming in the deep end.
Yeah, I'm serious. I'm trying to figure it out.
You don't make a kid a good swimmer like that, do you?
No.
How do you do it?
Slowly. Yeah, supportive, consistent.
Yeah, and what's going to determine if, say, Winnie is going to become an Olympic swimmer?
Well, she's got to want to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Or you run the risk of having a poor relationship where she goes and does
so how
it.
do you know? Imagine she says, I love swimming more than anything.
Yep.
Starts you're a good swimmer.
Yeah, so she's better than me. My age.
You're a good swimmer.
Yeah.
You got good at it in adult life. You are a good swimmer. So she's I really care about swimming.
Yep.
She starts doing it. She's I want to do swimming every weekend. I want to train on this squad.
Amazing.
I want to do it during the week. I want to compete.
Great.
How do you know if it's healthy or not?
As long as it doesn't sort of impact her social and emotional stuff along the way.
How do you tell?
How would I tell whether she becomes too fixated and loses all of her friends, and that's what she ties her whole identity to, is being successful in that? Because then if she's not going to reach the heights, she's left without any mates, and then also isn't at the height of her swimming.
And what would you want the priority for her to be about swimming? Winning and losing?
No. Oh, hang on. I can't remember what this one is. Yeah, hold on. I don't want to. Priority should be the enjoyment of it along the way.
The process.
The process, yeah. Enjoying the process.
Mastery.
Yeah, the mastery, that's it.
Karate Kid. Yeah.
Yeah, enjoy the mastery. Yeah, along the way. Because that'll ensure that she keeps going when she has doubt and doesn't.
And what do you have to keep in check? Let's say it's Ronnie. Ronnie's playing, WAFL for international listeners. Amazing.
Yeah, she's playing another sport.
Yeah, but she's playing another sport.
She just has to find mastery in
you love
anything
footy.
else. Yeah,
you love footy, and you're like, love nothing more than watching my daughter dominate on the footy field.
Yeah.
What do you have to be careful of in your bias there as a parent?
That her success, my love is conditional on her success.
Yeah, also that you're losing herself and her own experience in it because you're so overwhelmed by your own.
Yeah.
Or me, say that I'm like, I did so much uni, you guys better do uni. It's the only reason we could buy a house. Like, you know what I mean? You need to become a doctor.
Yep.
It's the only way you have financial security. I'm so worried about that growing up. I experienced it. You guys didn't, but it's really important. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know
I'm
all
losing
that
myself.
Yep.
Like
What do you mean you're losing yourself?
I'm losing the kid in my needs.
Losing the kid in my needs, yep.
Do you know what I mean? What are those kids' interests? What do they care about? How are they actually going? Are they still succeeding at it? Let them choose the things that they want to put effort into. This person's not saying that, but you don't go, well, guess what, Lynn? You're going to do piano for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? You watch where she goes and then you watch her succeed at it and continue to succeed at it. She gets to the point. I had to get pulled out of all sports growing up. No surprise. I was just too competitive. I was so competitive.
What should they have done otherwise?
Well, that was I just got the ball taken off me because it was like, instead of actually going, hey, it's not about being the best at this and winning, but you've run with me. Like, I'm still like that. I'm still like that. But do you know what I mean? Like, what
should someone have said to you?
Enjoy it. You should be enjoying it. Looks like you're not enjoying it.
Yeah, so then what? Explore it with them. How do you reckon you'd enjoy it more? Well, I just want to win
so
more.
we wouldn't be judgmental. It'd be like,
win.
hey, you seem to be getting angry. Let's use the same framework. You seem to be getting angry.
Yeah.
I've noticed you're playing really well and you just missed it once. You stuffed it up once.
Yeah.
So just objective.
Yeah.
You were doing really well and then you dropped the ball once and you got really angry about yourself about it and you lashed out at the other kids.
Yeah.
Seems like you're really angry about this.
Yeah.
I feel like you have a need for this to be something that you experience that's positive. It doesn't seem to be. What do you think? And go through it with them.
Yeah.
That's how you build actual true success in stuff.
Yep.
Not be like, just grit your teeth and keep going, push past the worst bits of it, fingers bleeding, learning piano scales. Do you know what I mean?
Whiplash.
Those days are over. Like, hopefully they're over. That's not how people actually genuinely are the best in the world at things. This 1,000 hours crap of just push everything else in your needs aside creates really dysfunctional, unwell, mentally unstable adults who are the best at something in the world and have had horrible lives, which none of us want for our kids. So it's about the balance. You start with all the other stuff first and then you can help them progress to succeeding at the things they're really passionate about that they enjoy.
Billy, that brings us to the end of all of our long questions for this week. So we're going to roll into the advice.
Yeah, and just quickly before we do that, I just wanted to say a special shout out to everyone that sent in questions, advice and feedback because we can only read out a fraction of what comes in. There was some really powerful stuff, some stuff where people are going through amazing, transformations, but also awful tragedies. And to just hear that PCP is helping a little bit, is phenomenal. And I read them all. So it's, I just got to figure out a way to honour that better because we can only get to a little bit of what comes through, but it informs everything we do.
We still get to read everything, but we can only talk about a small amount. But it's a lot for you to take on as well.
Oh, not as a privilege, but it's more just that, there's some really powerful stuff that came through, and we're also going to touch on conflict resolution within neurodiversity because it was just too big a topic to go into real depth here, but also conflict between parents that are not on the same page, as in separated parents and stuff like that, because I know the co-parenting one in the past, Mrs. Doubtfire didn't really go into that deeply, and I want to because I see it in clinic, experienced it personally growing up. It's really, a lot of people are really struggling in that setting, so I promise we'll get to that too.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Advice 1, Billy, from a listener. Hi, Dr. Billy and Nick. Thanks for another great episode. This is the first time I have felt I actually have a little tip to share with you and the listeners. I can't take total credit for this because I have nicked it from my amazing dad who used it to coach me through a sticky situation and has often brought it back to the forefront of my mind in guiding me through life. Here it is. What's the outcome you want? Enter conflict or difficult conversations with what's the outcome you want at the front of your mind, and this has helped a fiery lady nicknamed Mounts of Vesuvius in my younger years due to my ability to spontaneously erupt into a much more balanced and rational person. I now enter conversations with a medium or long-term goal for the relationship in mind rather than an impulsive response to a specific situation. The what's the outcome you want question also tells me when I'm ready to have a tough chat about it if my internal answer is something unproductive and aggressive, that I'm not ready to address the issue and I need more time to regulate myself. Okay. Hope this is helpful. Thank you again for all you do in the community.
Yeah, I really like that one.
Love it. I actually, can I be honest, I do that at work a bit.
Yeah. What's the goal?
Where are we trying to get to?
Yeah, totally. And it's really like Marshall Rosenberg talks about that as well, as like what's the goal or what's the outcome you're trying to achieve.
Totally.
And often it's like, harmony, feeling safe, connectedness and all that stuff, and thinking about what's the strategy that we do to get there that kind of uses the framework we've spoken about. So beautiful. Okay, I will do the next bit of advice, which is, hi guys. Long-term listener, first-time writer. I love the pod and rave about you guys to anyone who will listen, so I'm very excited to finally write something in. I work in an industry where conflict resolution is basically my job. Conflict doesn't scare me and I'm trained to take almost all emotion out of a situation and remain calm when dealing with it. Pretty jealous of that. I know I'm good at it, but this is not at all how I was raised, so I'm determined to do things differently with my own kids. I was raised to fear the wrath of my parents and most particularly the classic love withdrawal of a guilt trip. If conflict wasn't met with outright, sometimes violent anger from my mother, it would be the opposite, where I wouldn't be spoken to for days on end because of some perceived slight. Even now, despite my conflict resolution skills and adult confidence, I will do anything to avoid angering my mother for fear of the guilt trip that will inevitably follow if I don't. So this week's topic was both triggering and in a way healing. Sometimes it's hard for me to work out whether I do things or take certain actions in relation to parents because of actual love, or because I'm just saying or doing whatever I have to avoid dealing with the roller coaster of emotions that will follow if I upset them. Sadly, I think it's mostly the latter. This is why I'm so passionate about this topic and especially about raising my kids differently. Anyway, one of the few things that I know I do well with my own kids is conflict resolution, and I thought I would share a tip that has helped me a lot with my young kids. My 5-year-old daughter loves to draw. Although we're raising her to not be scared of her feelings and articulate what is happening when she's upset, I find that she sometimes struggles to express what she's feeling. So I found that a good way to break the ice and to help her work it out is to ask her to draw what she's feeling. Whatever she draws, I will use her to ask questions and talk to her about what's going on. I find this is a good, indirect and low-pressure way of opening the conversation when she's ready to talk. The first time I tried this, she drew a very basic, sad face, and I said that I'd made her feel this way. So we talked it through, figured out what had led to that and resolved the issue. I can't even remember what it was now, but one of the biggest parenting wins I ever experienced was about 5 minutes later, well after the conversation had ended, when she spontaneously drew a smiley face with flowers and came running over to show me, saying, "That's how I feel, Mummy." It made my heart swell. She now proactively uses this strategy sometimes whenever she's struggling. I feel very proud of this low-pressure, calm way to begin resolving conflict without making my kids feel shamed or unable to express themselves. Anyway, I thought I would share in case this helps others. Once again, love all that you do and really appreciate the pod. I feel like your discussions are both educating and helping to heal my own inner child in ways that are hard to express. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. It's a great one, isn't it? So we do that a lot in clinic, trying to understand, the internal experience of kids, get them to draw stuff like the family or, even more kind of just open, whatever they're thinking about and feeling about. And it can be a great way to interpret things that they struggle to express verbally. So it's a beautiful thing to see, does this help my child express how they feel? It's a really good non-verbal communication component to it as well, just understanding of facial expressions and expressing their own internal feelings through that. So, yeah it's beautiful.
Awesome. I'd like to keep those pictures as well. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah. You're actually pretty good at that, aren't you? You keep a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Except if one of the kids becomes an artist, and then I'll probably sell it.
Yeah, like
Early
Macaulay's
works.
parents.
The early works.
I was resourcing all this time. All these profits are mine.
All right, Billy, we've got 2 closes here.
Yeah.
First one. This podcast is helping me be a better teacher and to reparent myself. I do not have living children of my own. I'm part of an adult children of alcoholics group where our solution is to become our own loving parent. Your podcast is part of my work in the program. Like yourselves, I grew up in a house where conflict was the norm. In some ways, I was raised by movies, both my home life and what I watched on the screen influenced how I navigated relationships. I came from a family where domestic violence was a trauma passed on from one generation to the next. This came in the form of physical, emotional, and intellectual violence. No one was taught how to non-violently communicate, how to process emotions, or how to grieve past and present traumas. My father was a man who would even use guns as an intimidation tool. This became one of my first memories of how he interacted with me, my sister, and my mum. When y'all talked about not withdrawing love during conflict, everything in me was silenced. When y'all talked about not withdrawing love during conflict, everything in me was silenced. I knew this was something I needed to heal from and not to pass along anymore. Love was often withdrawn from me when I was a child in big forms, like my father not being a part of my life anymore. Though this was needed, as his violence was a real threat in our lives, it did have its impact. It was not evident that in not knowing how to communicate or process even typical developmental behaviours in the kids, the adult in my family only knew how to withdraw love and blame others during conflict. Sometimes days, if not weeks, would go by where I was not talked to or acknowledged. I knew this was a generational coping method or strategy when I heard a story about my grandfather. He had suffered a stroke and no one knew for months. He was not able to talk due to the stroke. He finally went to the doctor, and when asked what he thought when he didn't talk to anyone, the children said, "We thought he was just mad at us." The story was often told to me with a humorous lens, but it makes my heart ache. It is a heartbreaking truth of our family. I fear the autopilot in me to withdraw love, to give the cold shoulder during conflict. This has been ingrained in me from generations of hardship where the children paid the price and then passed on the tradition to the unhealed adults. As unhealed adults, listening to podcasts and reflecting on my behaviours has been one of the many ways I aim to heal this trauma. I do the work every day, and I have grown tremendously with more work always being on the horizon. I believe there is nothing more important in my life than to heal within myself and by consequences be a loving grown up to others. I do not wish for any other achievement in my life other than this. What advice would you have for stopping the ingrained way of being? Thank you for your work. It matters.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I really relate to that. Like, I, even as an adult, used to do that, where I'd just shut down and internalise and kind of punitively withdraw my affection from others. And the advice that I'd give outside of everything we've spoken about, just because it's such a powerful reflection, but also hopefully I can be helpful, is that, you know, we talk about the internal conflict with ourselves, with others and our kids, but also you have to have like loving, safe relationships with yourself, with others and your kids as well. And you have helped me heal from that, and me to feel safe in relationships where I don't need to withdraw and things like that. I can actually go towards someone when I'm struggling, and going towards ourselves when we're feeling like that and struggling and thinking about what the emotion is and all that stuff, and then helping our kids and those we care about do it is really powerful as well.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, I just thought it was beautiful. Okay, final one. Hey, Billy, Nick. I'm an absolute huge fan of the work you both do, and so incredibly grateful for the PCB community that you've created. I'm a long-time listener now with New Zealand, from New Zealand, and your recent episode on conflict resolution came at the perfect time. I've grown up incredibly fortunate to not know the terrible trauma and distress that some children unfortunately do. But saying that, I also grew up in the 90s, and like a lot of middle-class families, the soundtrack to my childhood consisted of a lot of "you're okay, stop being silly, and be a good girl." As one of 3 girls, there's been a lot of pressure and expectation to maintain close sibling relationships. I do not feel I have the capacity or desire for this. As we've grown up, we've become very different people. I can love and appreciate them both, but more from a distance, as we can't relax and play together with dolls like we quite like we used to. As an adult now, I have an incredibly loving, open-minded and kind husband who's also a huge fan of PCP. And together we have the most gorgeous, wiry, but fiery redheaded 15-month-old daughter. I truly think becoming a parent is the most transformative experience. I've reflected more on my values and morals in the past 15 months than ever before. This has led me down a bit of a path of reparenting myself, and I've been learning how to have some difficult conversations, might I add, stumbling through a lot of them. Late this year, I discovered Marshall Rosenberg's work and listened to his audiobook a couple of times, trying to digest his approach to resolving conflict. A lot of it hasn't come naturally to me. Like you, Billy, I find myself overcompensating, avoiding, and ultimately feeling angry about the relationship dynamic I have with my siblings. Before our daughter arrived, I felt I could just put up with the behaviours and comments that really bothered me because I had my wonderful husband to lean on for support and debrief with after every interaction. Now, with our daughter becoming that much more aware of the world around her, I felt incredibly guilty that she may overhear some of the comments I make in response to my frustrations. I also worry she'll think, "God, Mum, just do something about it if it annoys you that much. Stop chiming in on about the same old crap." Or worse, that she'll learn from my behaviour and grow up to ignore her feelings and needs and ultimately get trampled on. I saw this a lot with my own mum, and I truly feel for her and the women in her generation who for a lot of them were peacekeepers because they felt they had to be, always holding their tongue and sacrificing their happiness. This is quite honestly an overwhelming fear that my beautiful, strong, hilarious daughter may feel like this. It's the perfect kick up the butt. I need to sort myself out and set an example on the importance of doing what is hard. I'm writing to you after sitting down and having written multiple copies of my observations, feelings and needs and requests, and I'm just about to make the call to my sister to express these. Although my heart is racing and I know that my voice will be shaking, I have you both to thank, as well as Marshall Rosenberg, for giving me the tools to approach this difficult conversation in a way that doesn't shed blame, but is constructive and hopefully find a healthier path forward for the both of us. Wish me luck again. I can't thank you enough for the work you do. I really contemplated on the thought of bringing a child into this world. Selfishly, I knew she would bring me incredible joy, but I worried what I could bring her would be less than that. But you and the PCP crew give me so much hope that she'll grow up a more and well-adjusted, kind, respectful and open-minded world. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. And a couple of things with that. Rosenberg, you probably haven't heard him, but he's got this like really beautiful voice. Like deep dulcet tones, like 2 other people I know, and and it's also, I was in a meeting this morning with someone was talking about like how beautiful it is having kids, and they were like, yeah, there was an emptiness that I didn't know existed until those kids filled it, and I was like, God, that's beautiful. This is like a high-powered dad who just like said that off the cuff, and I was like, I had to stop him and be like, God, that's beautiful. I just wanted to say as well, because I think it's a really important bit that we haven't spoken about to close out on, is that conflict resolution and the steps we talked about is about giving the best opportunity for, healthy paths forward and to have everyone's need met. But there will be times where it isn't successful because the other person isn't there yet. And I, years ago, was told I needed to talk to someone in my family about something traumatic that had happened, and I resisted it for a long time, and you know about this story. I eventually did it and was met with a lot of anger and hostility, and that was still good for me because it helped me know that I'd gone through it in a healthy way. But I just want to raise caution about people like going into those spaces and, like we talked about before, thinking about what the goal is. Like it's really hard when so much of the world is really struggling, and we can look after our own feelings and try and help have positive interactions with everyone else, but it doesn't always happen. And so I just wanted to say to that person, you've already achieved so much. If it doesn't land, don't take the blame for it, and just think about, you gave it your best shot, and that's really all any of us are trying to do.
Yeah, okay. It's a nice message to finish on.
Yeah, well, yes, fine. Finally, that was a fairly long one, but yeah, thank you, mate. Hopefully that was a helpful one. We could have done 2, like part 2s. We could have done 3 episodes on this, but I'm always anxious to get to the next one as well.
Do you know what the next one is yet?
Possibly. I've got a few. I've got to watch the movies and find if I can find a scene that suits.
No clues this week? No.
No, we'll put it out. We'll put it out. I'll put it on socials, because I just haven't nailed it yet. And I know if I tie myself down to it, I won't be able to find a scene in the movies.
Don't do that. So. Billy, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed the topic.
Very quickly,
yes,
we got given at a live show props for The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
Whoever sent that to us, can you please reach out and say what they were so we know who it is? Because I want to find a way to validate it. It was beautiful. We get given props a bit. We've got this amazing Ripley jacket that we're going to use in the future somehow for some amazing listeners. But
Are you
can
talking
you
about the ones that I gave you?
Yeah. Can that person please connect?
Yeah.
So, because we'd just like to hear from you.
Should I say the movie just in case?
Fifth Element, yeah. But yeah.
Fifth Element.
Yeah.
Oh, I know exactly what they are.
Yeah. No, I know you do, but yeah.
Yeah.
If people could reach out, because I just want to acknowledge that it was such a beautiful thing. And I meant to do it in the episode, but I forgot about it.
Okay. No dramas.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys. We'll speak to you soon.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.